guys, and welcome back to the Festival of the Unexplained. I'm sat quietly pondering about all of the stories that we've had over the past 24 hours. And to me, this seems to be an occurring pattern happening. And these patterns are mental illness, and we don't talk about it very often. Now, some of the stories that we featured have been surreal. They've been very personal, very emotional, but also very endearing. And it takes so much effort for people to talk about attempting to take their own lives. Now, my next guest is a very, very special guest. He's been in the US military, but he's going to talk to us about the aftermath. Now, people who have succeeded in taking their own lives and what that actually does. Now, I'd like to welcome Mike Archer. Hello, Mike. Thank you for joining me. So I might as well unmute you. The beauty of technology, I guess. But it's great to have you talking to me, and thank you so much, because I know how sensitive a topic this is, especially for, you know, military people and personnel, because, you know, like yourself, my partner's in the military and is still serving in the military after 17 years. So it's, you know, this story was quite humbling to me and quite, it's quite relevant, really. But you've dealt with a number of people who have taken their own lives. Now, what actually led them to do that?
So there's a lot of them where they just couldn't cope with what they experienced while we were deployed, the things they went through, the things they saw, the things they had to do, the choices they had to make. So a lot of them, when we came back, they had no outlet, because this was around 2006. There was still a stigma in the military that if you did go to get seen, then you were looked at as being weak.
Yeah.
And on an aside to that, if you did go and get help, then the military, or in my case, I served in the Army was looking to chapter you out, just basically kick you out. So a lot of the soldiers try to keep it inside. We try to talk to each other, but just some became distant, and unfortunately.
And you see, obviously, when the military try and cover things up like that, you know, this is where soldiers and, you know, RAF personnel are seen now as having PTSD, you know, the atrocities that they've seen in war, and also just on deployments in general, when there's no war or anything like that, and you're just overseas on patrols, on, you know, deployments just in different countries, away from their families, away from their loved ones. You know, do you think that had a profound knock-on effect for your friends?
Yes. Some of them, you know, their first experience not being close to home, close to family, was the fact that they were now living in another state or living overseas and not having that family comfort to go to. And sure, you make friends, you make the best of friends with people, other fellow soldiers, but, you know, people with close ties to their family, it becomes difficult for them to get used to them not being there, not being a hand or arm's reach away to talk to. So
no, I know you've lost, I know you've lost a fair few friends actually to suicide. And, you know, I just want to ask you, was there any sort of warning signs from any of those friends that that they would have, you know, attempted to take their own lives?
So with 4 of them, yes. There was, you know, the obvious depression. Obviously, they weren't talking. They were giving their possessions away. Some of them were spending all their money because they already knew and planned in their head that they just weren't going to be around. So a lot of them did show a lot of signs. And, you know, everybody reached out to each and every one of them, but they ended up being successful with their suicide. And so, yeah.
So they didn't talk about it. So they wouldn't have spoken about it. But obviously the warning signals were there. Obviously, you've mentioned the selling of possessions and, you know, do you think that any of them, well, I'm asking actually, not do you think, but do you know if any of them actually left any notes for their families?
One did, and that was it. So then that causes, of course, the heartache with the family, because now they see it as, what did I do wrong? And what could I have done? And so that's something they have to live with now for the rest of their lives. But only one did. And it was short. It was, you know, I love you, family. You know, this is my decision and I need to go. And so it was, even that short little paragraph was heartbreaking. But it's definitely just as heartbreaking that for the families that don't know why, still to this day.
And it's hard for the families, isn't it, trying to overcome, you know, the grief and the stigma that's attached to it, because, you know, like friends of mine who've passed away through suicide, you know, their parents are always known as, you know, the person, you know, that's the family whose son committed suicide, and it's not a nice stigma to have. But I know that back in the day, before this was all quite highly publicized, because now we're in the midst of COVID, aren't we? And, you know, this is a worldwide pandemic, and this is causing a lot of Americans, a lot of the UK population to be out of work, and pressures that are amounting to keeping a family, keeping a roof over your head. You know, I think what I'm trying to ask is, you know, do you think that had those people been able to access the help that they required, would they have still been here, do you think?
I think absolutely. For the stigma then, not being able to reach out without the risk of being kicked out in the military, I think it could have played a pivotal role. And then actually, you know, sitting down and talking to somebody and working some things out and getting some type of treatment. And then with this whole pandemic, especially all of 2020, I can only imagine what statistics will be later on this year of, you know, how it went for last year, you know, people having to be in quarantine or be at home, and still away from family, still away from friends, and just the thought of hopelessness. I can only imagine that it'll go up, or at least the numbers would have gone up compared to years past.
Yeah, and I think with COVID, and obviously now, do the military, are they a little bit more lenient towards PTSD and mental health? Or are they still quite in the dark ages when it comes to the counseling and the discussions?
So they have come a long way. I would say the stigma finally around 2010, 2011, they started realizing, hey, war is tremendous on the brain. And it's tremendous for our soldiers returning. You know, and during the Vietnam War, it was, I forgot what it was called, something shock. But PTSD, they started looking at it as, okay, it's not a weakness, it's not a stigma, and it's okay to go get help. And yearly we get training And they finally started including actual videos from soldiers who had thought of or even attempted to commit suicide. And I think that changed finally the culture and started removing the stigma away from getting help. So they've come a long way. Still a long way to go.
But like, I know in America, they treat their veterans so much better than what they do here. I mean, here in the UK, we have veterans who are, you know, homeless. We've got, you know, we have obviously our national days, the Remembrance Sunday, and obviously never been part of the military previously, but obviously having a partner who is in the military, I've noticed that all the more now. And I've noticed that the Americans love their service personnel, and you know, will stand up and you know, will clap for them. But here in the UK, it's totally different. And you know, I just wish that we could adopt the same stance, but then also I just wish that we could adopt the same, you know, counseling processes that we have as well, because you know, there are some awfully dangerous jobs in all military positions, and if they're suffering with mental health issues, then that could potentially lead to catastrophic events, you know, out in the field. And you know, it's difficult, isn't it? And especially because you've lost friends along the way through to, you know, through no fault of their own really, and just through this what I would call PTSD and mental health due to doing their job. You know, it's difficult, it's so hard. But you obviously, we saw in the book, you know, you have an awful lot of friends who have passed away. You know, if they were here and they hadn't succeeded in taking their own lives, you know, how would you think that they would be able to address those circumstances? You know, how would you think that, I think what I'm trying to get at is, you know, what advice would they potentially give to somebody, or what would you give?
I know if they were here, one in particular, the most recent of the photos was 4 years ago. I think if she hadn't gone through with what she did, I think she would be the person finally to be more open about, this was my mental state. This is what I was thinking. This is why I felt the way I did. And how can I help? And that's the thing is, you know, we hear the term, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to not just say hi.
Yeah.
How are you? What's going on? It's okay to care. And I think for some people, and I know one in particular, we noticed how unengaged he was, and he was the most open person ever. Funny, great guy, but we noticed something wasn't right, and so me and my friend discussed it, and he pulled him off to the side, and just that one talk, saved his life.
And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? If you can recognize the signs of somebody in distress and somebody who definitely needs to talk, just that, you know, that friendly shoulder to sort of cry on makes a whole world of difference, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, and we look for warning signs, and sometimes there's those very few cases there is no sign. Just like the person I mentioned earlier, that was 4 years ago, there was absolutely no warning signs. There was nothing. Top of her game, one of the best soldiers in the Army, was moving on to bigger and better things in the Army, setting her up for future success. And she ended up taking her life, and no one knows why.
And it's sad, really, isn't it? Because it's such a waste. It is such a waste, especially when they have so much to live for. But
Yes.
as you say, in that time when it's distressing and they have nowhere to turn and they don't feel like they have the people to talk to, that's usually when it becomes more sinister.
Yes, definitely.
But I think after talking to you and understanding, the aftermath, do you find yourself questioning constantly, why did you do it?
I do with a few of them, but more so the last one from 4 years ago, because we were good friends. We were friends, worked well with each other, hung out a few times, but even her best friends, they didn't see it. No one saw it coming, and it's just all of a sudden there's a phone call that, hey, she's gone. And so it's just we still question here 4 years later why. And so I can only imagine the family and them every single day, and even her daughter that she left behind. So there's always going to be that why in the back of my brain and the family and friends, and it'll be lingering with us forever.
Yeah. But I just, obviously with suicide, we do say it's a sensitive topic, and I just want to say thank you for coming along and chatting to me. And it's a totally different perspective from somebody who's actually lost people and they've actually succeeded. But also it's a totally different ball game when you're talking to somebody who has attempted to take their own lives and they're still here to tell the tale. And I'm so sorry that you've lost your friends. And, I do hope that anybody who watches this and actually thinks that there is no way out for them, I would honestly speak to somebody and, speak to your closest people, because there is no shame in it anymore, is there?
There isn't. It's talk, talk to anybody you can. And everyone else needs to check on people. Hey, how are you doing? Hey, what's going on? Hey, I see that you're down today. Some simple words to somebody could change their life, could change their thought process. And I hope we can go back to that.
Yeah, I hope so too. And, I'd like everybody to kind of take a minute and think about those people who have succumbed to suicide. And it's not a selfish act. It's, it's not selfish. It leaves so many questions behind. And with us raising money for Calm, this will give, so far we've raised a number, of calls that can be answered just by an operator, which could be just one life-saving call for somebody. So if you can, please do dig deep. And we understand COVID has put families in financial difficulties, but we just say everything can help. But even if it's that checking up on somebody and saying, hi, please, do you want to talk? Equally do that as well, because somebody out there may desperately need your help. But Mike, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us, and much love to you, and I'm sure we will be speaking quite a lot in the future as well.
Definitely. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. But like we say, if you are struggling and you are suffering in and amongst this pandemic, then please call Calm if you're in the UK. And if you're in the USA, then I will look up some information on who you can speak to over there, and I will put them in the comments as well.